YouTube, how are you now? Got another time to kill chart for you guys. Battlefield 2042 again for the assault rifles. So I was messing around with the new GEW-46. I wanted to see how the different ammunition types affected the time to kill based on the stats. So I went through and tested all the assault rifles, full auto assault rifles, not the AC-42 burst rifle, including the portal weapons. So just to give you a quick run through of how this works, we got your weapon, rate of fire, magazine capacity, ranges 10, 15, 20, 30, all the way out to 100 plus meters. So I did it normally 10, 20, 30, but the portal weapons have damage drop-offs at 75 meters. And then the MTAR 21 also has a damage drop-off at 15 meters. So I added those two ranges in there just so that it could accommodate those drop-off ranges. But those are ranges. You have your weapons here, M5, A3, M40, so on and so forth, and the different ammunition types they have, the rate of fires that correspond with those, and then the maximum magazine capacities that go with those. So time to kill wise, this is your time to kill in milliseconds, assuming that you hit every single shot and full auto. So this is your theoretical time to kill. The numbers are the milliseconds. Red means the fastest time to kill. If there's multiple reds, that means they're within 10 milliseconds of each other, but the bold and italicized would be the fastest in that category. Same thing for the orange. Orange is within 50 milliseconds of the fastest. Yellow is within 100 milliseconds. Bright green is within 150 milliseconds, and then dark green is within 200 milliseconds. So I don't think anything goes beyond that. So this is just the assault rifles that have different ammunition types. All the portal weapons don't have them. So this is just, I just wanted to look at this to see which ammunition type would be best for which gun. So like the M5A3, the high power has the best time to kill, but it also only has 20 round magazines. So I would actually stick with like the standards. So you have 40 rounds, and it's not too far outside the time to kill, just barely outside of 50 milliseconds. So 53 milliseconds slower here, and then within 50 milliseconds here. So not too noticeable, but you get double the magazine capacity. So just looking through these to see which ammunition type would be best. So for the RM68, high power and standard are pretty much the best there. And then for the new gun, the GEW-46, the high power is easily the best as far as time to kill goes. It has a little bit more recoil than the standard. So after playing around with it for a little bit, I thought the standard was better, but after looking at the stats and testing it a little bit more, the high power is definitely better. So the recoil is not that much more significant than the standard, so it doesn't make up enough for the massive differences in the time to kill. So it's still not that massive. It's only 57 milliseconds here, but, and then what is this, 63 milliseconds here. So it's not outrageously slower, but it is noticeably slower. So that's one extra bullet, but it does fire a little bit faster, 750 versus 700. But I still think the high power is better since you have the 30 round capacity, whereas some of the other high powers you only have 20 rounds. So like the high power on the RM68, you only have 20 rounds. The standard has 30 rounds, so I would go with the 30 round standard on the RM68. So that's just the comparison within each weapon, and then this is the comparison of all the assault rifles against each other. Just selected the best one of each, so the M5 A3 standard rounds, AM40 standard rounds, AK-24 standard rounds, S4 high power rounds, RM68 standard, and then GEW-46 high power. So the high power has a little bit more recoil. So like the S4 is because it has 40 rounds compared to like the 30 round standard, but the 30 round standard fires at 650 rounds per minute. So if the recoil is a bit too much on the high power, you may want to go to the standard versions, but they won't be as competitive because this is the most competitive time to kills with magazine capacity and all that into consideration. And then recoil is also an issue. So there's only two weapons that I would say the recoil invalidates these theoretical time to kills. So that would be the AEK 971 and then the M16A3. The AEK 971 for sure. The M16 is not too bad, but it is a lot more noticeable than most of the other weapons. So most of the other weapons have very little recoil. Some of them are pretty much pure laser beams, but for the most part, their recoil is manageable. But those two guns, the AEK 971 and M16, I would say somewhat negate this time to kill chart here. So the standout in the beginning was obviously the RM68, and it still stands out here. The surprise here was the MTAR 21. So it has the fastest time to kill up close, out to 15 meters, because it does 28 damage and it fires at 900 rounds per minute. So the highest damage in the assault rifle class is 28, but none of them fire anywhere near 900 rounds per minute. They're usually around like 700. So the RM68 does 28 damage, but it only fires at 710. So the MTAR has the fastest time to kill, or the second fastest time to kill, pretty much all the way out to 100 meters, and then it's only a little bit slower at 100 plus meters, but at that range you're probably not going to be hitting shots anyway. But I still find that the MTAR is not the greatest, especially at range. Even though it has very little recoil, it seems to have some type of accuracy penalty compared to some of the other guns. So that one, and also the ACWR. So the ACWR statistically should be really good, should be comparable to the RM68 close combat rounds, but the RM68 just seems to be a lot more consistent at range. So even though the ACWR doesn't have any recoil, you're not getting the hit markers even though you're shooting directly at them, whereas the RM68 at those ranges can still hit those shots pretty consistently. So I feel like there's some type of accuracy penalty to those two guns. So even though they're statistically really good, they just don't seem to line up in game, especially at those longer ranges. So close to mid-range is not really an issue, but at those longer ranges it seems to miss shots even though you're on target and the recoil is not really affecting it. So yeah, and the GEW-46, how it stacks up, it's still pretty good. It's only within 3 milliseconds here of the RM68, but then at the 30 to 50 meter range it's considerably slower, 90 milliseconds slower, and then the rest of the way it's pretty close. So in that mid-range it's considerably slower, but everywhere else it's pretty consistent with it, and that's the high power. If you go with the standard, it's considerably slower at beyond 50 meters, so you're going to need an extra shot to kill 50 meters beyond. So it's a really good gun. It's just not as good as the RM68. And then really there is no other gun as good as the RM68, because even though the MTAR is the fastest killing up close with 900 rounds per minute, the RM68 is only 54 milliseconds slower, so not that much slower. Even though it shoots slower, it does more damage at a longer range. It's more consistent, but MTAR is probably better up close because you're not going to have that accuracy penalty, whatever that may be, up close. It's only at those longer ranges where it starts to notice. So MTAR would definitely be the best up close, and then the RM68 the best everywhere else. And everything else is just kind of in there. They're all competitive, besides like the AK-24. AK-24 is pretty terrible at these ranges, mid-range and long range. And then the M416s are not that great either up close and then at long range as well. But the M416 has so little recoil that it doesn't feel that bad at mid to long range. Up close, you notice it's slower, but at mid to long range, it feels pretty good because it has so little recoil. Most of the guns don't have a whole lot of recoil, but the M416, I would say, probably has the least recoil of all of them. It's a laser beam, but statistically, it's not the greatest. But if some of the other weapons that are better statistically have a more recoil than you can handle, the M416 may be the way to go there. But yeah, no surprises there. I just wanted to compare the stats and get the actual numbers versus how it felt in game. How it felt in game pretty much matches up, other than the GEW-46 high power versus standard rounds. But I think that could have been because I was testing the high power rounds in Breakthrough offline and then the standard rounds in Conquest. So the Conquest connections are a lot better. Breakthrough connections are pretty bad. So maybe the hit detection was the issue there, because high power doesn't have a whole lot more recoil than the standard, at least after I was testing it, after looking at the stats. But yeah, it helps me just putting the numbers out there and then putting a chart together like this with color differentials, so You can just compare it by range, see where your gun of choice stands out, where it may lack, and what would be the better option. So helps inform how you want to play with what gun, or what gun you want to play with, depending on how you want to play. So yeah, let me know if you'd be interested in another breakdown on like the SMGs or the LMGs, that kind of stuff. I haven't looked at those for a while, but could always test them in Portal. It's not that hard to do, but putting it all together and all that takes a little bit of time, but could be worth it if you're interested. But I was mainly concerned with just testing out the GEW-46, so I was like, I might as well just test all the other assault rifles to see how they stack up against each other. But yeah, I guess that's it. Thanks for watching. I'll see you guys in the next one. Peace.